Please don't call my son. He locks the garden. It was 10 past midnight on a Thursday in March, in a 24-hour laundromat in Yeonhui-dong, the dryers ticking, when Azeze Okonkwo looked up from the uniform she was washing for her 7 a.m. shift, her third job that week. The woman's coat was cashmere, and the name stitched inside its collar owned the tower blinking above the hill. Adaize assumed she would hand her a phone and mind her own visa. What she did instead carried her to a dinner table in Hanam-dong where her voice would be repeated all night. The laundromat smelled of lemon detergent and hot lint. Outside, the last taxi of the night idled at the crosswalk, its driver eating gimbap from a plastic tray, and the wind came down off Inwangsan with the wet edge that Seoul keeps in March, when the city pretends it is spring and is not. The woman stood between the folding table and the coin machine. Cashmere coat, yes, also house slippers, soaked through to gray, and a hem stiff with mud. One pearl earring, no second. No phone, no bag, no card, no coins. On the back of her hand, in blue ballpoint, someone had written 4 numbers, and the ink had run in the rain until only 2 of them could still be read. Adoeze did the arithmetic she always did. Her bus at 6:40, her patient at 7, Mrs. Bake, who needed turning every 2 hours and did not like new hands, her exam on Saturday, her mother's dialysis in Enugu, paid the 5th of every month, no later. 211 days remaining on the visa that belonged, technically, to her employer. She should have dialed 112 and gone back to her spin cycle. Halmeoni, she said instead, sit down before you fall down. The old woman blinked at her. Then, very slowly, she smiled, the way people smile at a sound they have not heard in a long time. Say that again, she said. Say it exactly the way you said it. Amara said it again. Halmeoni, sit down before you fall down. She said it the way she had said it the first time, without smoothing anything, without pressing her tongue flat against the vowels the way she did on the phone with the immigration office. The words came out with Enugu underneath them and 4 years of Seoul on top, and the old woman listened to them the way a person listens to rain after a dry month. Yes, the old woman said, that one, that is a real voice. Then her knees went, and Amara caught her under the arms. The plastic stool was the kind stacked outside chicken shops in summer, cracked along one leg, and Amara wiped it with her sleeve before she lowered the woman onto it. Machine 4 was in its final spin, rattling like a coin in a can. Machine 7 held a stranger's silk blouse that Mr. Beck had promised for 8 in the morning. The clock over the folding table said 12:14. Somewhere behind Amara's ribs, a small, careful accountant began adding things up. 40 minutes to walk this woman anywhere, no taxi fare that was not visa fare, one shop rule taped to the wall in laminated red, no customers inside after 11, no strangers, no exceptions, signed by the owner himself, and a camera in the corner that recorded everything and belonged to that same owner, whose signature she needed in 11 days on a form that would decide whether she stayed in this country or went home with nothing. She counted it all. She did not stop moving while she counted. The woman's slippers were velvet, soaked black to the ankle, and when Amara peeled the left one off, the foot inside was swollen over the strap in a way that meant hours of walking, not minutes. There was a strip of paper tape on her wrist where a hospital band had been cut away. Her coat was thin wool, expensive, buttoned wrong. In her pocket, 3 persimmons in a convenience store bag, hard as stones, and a house key with a red plastic tag. Amara opened the second dryer, the one still warm from a mountain of restaurant aprons, and pulled out 2 towels that had been waiting since 10. She wrapped them around the swollen foot. The old woman made a sound like someone being forgiven. Where were you going, Halmeoni? Out. Out is very big. Out is enough. The woman's chin lifted. Under the fluorescent light, her hair was set in careful rolls, the sort of set a person does not do herself, the sort that costs money and an appointment. I went out through the kitchen. Nobody watches the kitchen. 22 people at that table and not one of them watches the kitchen. Amara filled the electric kettle at the mop sink because the mop sink was the only tap. She poured barley tea from her own thermos into the paper cup she had been saving for the second half of her shift, and she pressed it into the woman's hands and closed the fingers around it herself, because the hands were shaking and the tea was hot. Drink, small sips. You are ordering me. Yes. Nobody orders me. Tonight somebody does. The old woman laughed. It came out cracked in the middle, like a plate that had been glued. She drank, and her shoulders came down 2 centimeters, and she looked around the laundromat, at the dented washers, the calendar from a rice cake shop, the plastic basket of odd socks nobody had claimed since spring. with the frank attention of someone who had not stood inside a room this ordinary in a very long time. "What is your name?" "Amara." "Amara." The woman shaped it slowly, respectfully, the way people did when they were actually trying. "I am Ukja." A pause exactly 1 beat too long. "Tonight I am only Ukja." Amara noted the pause and filed it where she filed things she was not paid to ask about. She had been in Seoul long enough to know what a withheld surname weighed. She had also been a nurse's daughter long enough to know what a cut hospital band meant, and what happened to a woman with a foot like that if she slept somewhere with no heat. There were 3 sensible options. Call 112 and let the police return her to whoever was missing her. Call the community center, closed, or walk her 4 blocks to the police substation, where a young officer would speak to her loudly and slowly, and she would sit under that light with her wrong buttons and her ruined slippers while a form was filled out. "Halmeoni, somebody is looking for you." The tea stopped halfway to the woman's mouth. "Yes. They will be frightened. They will be inconvenienced." She said it precisely, without heat, the way an accountant reads a number she has checked twice. There is a difference, and I have had 50 years to learn it. At that table tonight, my grandson's wife told a table of guests that I am difficult, in front of me, like reading a receipt out loud, and my son looked at his plate. Her thumb moved along the rim of the paper cup. The nurse they hired speaks to me as though I am a machine that has stopped taking cards. "Please try again. Please try again. Nobody has said sit down before you fall down to me since my mother died in 1971. Amara crouched and unwrapped the towel, felt the ankle, wrapped it again looser. The spin cycle stopped. The room went suddenly, enormously quiet, and in that quiet she made her decision the way she made all of them, silently, completely, without any belief that it would be rewarded. "I close at 2, she said. "You will sit here where it is warm. You will eat what I have, because I have rice and stew, and it is more than you think. And at 2, we will call whoever it is, and I will stand there while you talk to them, and if they are rude to you, I will take the phone." Okja looked at her for a long moment. "Why?" "Because your foot is broken and my rice is hot." Amara stood, and the folded towels in her arms steamed faintly. The other reasons are longer. The lunchbox from her bag was still lukewarm at the center, egusi and rice, the last of what she had cooked on Sunday to last the week. She spooned half onto the lid and set it on the folding table and pushed a plastic fork into the woman's hand, and Okja ate slowly, blinking at the pepper, and then ate faster, and did not say one word about the smell. At 12:51, a phone began to buzz inside the folded coat on the counter. Okja stopped chewing. "Do not answer." But the screen had already lit up against the wool, and Amara, reaching to silence it, saw the name that flashed there, 2 syllables and a company after them, the same company printed on the side of the glass tower she passed every morning on the 7016 bus. Her thumb hovered over the screen without touching it. The light came up through the wool like a lamp under a blanket, and the name sat there in 2 clean syllables with the company set behind it, and Amara read it twice because reading it once had not been enough. Do-hyun. Haesong, the same white letters that rode the flank of the tower at Gwanghwamun, 40 stories of green glass she watched slide past the window of the 7016 6 mornings a week while she ate a boiled egg out of her coat pocket. The phone stopped. The wool went dark. Behind her, the dryer in Bay 4 turned over somebody's bedding with a sound like a slow wave. "You saw the name," Okja said. "I saw a name. Then forget it." The old woman set the plastic fork down on the blue lid, precisely the way people set things down when their hands want to shake. "You will not be paid for remembering it." At 12:54, the phone rang again, and this time Amara pressed the button on the side until it went quiet, and then a message arrived, and the screen held it long enough for her to read it in the careful, dragging way she read all Korean that was not on a nursing flashcard. "Ma'am, please tell us the location. The car is close." Not a threat. Nothing in it a person could take to a police box. Only the flat courtesy of people who were already on their way. Amara set the phone face down on the counter beside the roll of receipt paper. "How did you get here?" she asked. Okja looked at the window, at the 2 of them reflected in it, a tall black woman in a shop apron, and a small woman in stockinged feet with her hair coming loose from its pin. She answered in pieces, the way people answer when the answering itself is humiliating. There had been a taxi on Jongro that would not take her without an address because she had refused to say an address. There had been a pharmacy with its shutter half down and a young pharmacist who said, "Ajuma, go home," and pulled the shutter the rest of the way. There had been a couple at the crossing who stepped around her the way water steps around a stone, and a police box where an officer, kind, bored, 24 years old, told her to telephone her family and offered her the desk phone to do it with. She had walked 6 blocks past that police box on an ankle the size of a grapefruit. Then she had seen a lit door and a woman inside folding towels at 1 in the morning, and lit doors at 1 in the morning were not so many. At 12:58, the shop's other customer came out of the restroom, a man in a puffer jacket who had been waiting on Bay 2 since before Okja arrived. He had watched the old woman limp in, he had watched her sit, he had turned his back and put in his earphones, and now he crossed to the folding table with his shirts, sniffed, made a small offended sound at the pepper still hanging in the air, and moved to the far table by the door. Amara went on folding. Okja, who had eaten from the lid of a stranger's lunch container without one word about the smell, watched him arrange his sleeves and said nothing either. At 1:06, the shop phone rang, and it rang the way that phone always rang, 2 shrill notes and then a hiccup of static, because Mr. Beck had refused to replace it since the year his wife chose it. Amara set the folded shirt on the stack, squared the collar with 2 fingers and picked up on the 4th ring the way she had been taught. Bake laundry, good afternoon. A pause on the line, not a confused pause, a measuring one. Is the owner there? The man's voice was low and pressed flat, the voice of someone who had never once had to repeat himself. He has gone to the bank, he returns at 2, she said it slowly, carefully, each ending correct, the way she practiced in the shower with the water running so no one would hear her getting it wrong. Again. Amara closed her eyes for half a second. He returns at 2 o'clock. Is there a Korean person there? The steam press hissed behind her, letting off its long white breath. The fussy young man at the far table had stopped folding to listen, his earphones pushed down around his neck, and Okja had gone very still on the plastic stool by the window with the green lid balanced on her knees, the last of the pepper stew shining on it, and Amara felt all of it at once, the listening, the flatness of the voice, the ordinary insult that had already worn a groove in her by 14 months in this city. There is me, she said. Another pause. He decided to make do. We are looking for an elderly woman, 78 years old, short, thin, gray cardigan, brown shoes, no phone. She may have walked from the direction of Yunhuidong. She may tell you she is waiting for a bus. She may tell you she is fine. He recited it like inventory. The family is grateful for information, very grateful. Do you understand the word? I understand the word. Have you seen her? Amara looked at Okja. Okja was 78 and thin and wearing a gray cardigan with a small brown burn hole near the 3rd button and brown shoes worn down on the outer heel from a lifetime of standing crooked. And 2 hours ago she had come in out of the rain and asked, with no shame at all, whether the smell was food and whether there was extra. Amara had given her the container and kept the lid for herself. Okja had reversed it without asking, taken the lid, pushed the container back across the folding table, and eaten rice and agusi with a plastic fork, sweating, saying nothing about the pepper except, once, quietly, that her husband had liked things that fought back. Now she lifted her chin a 1/4 inch. Her eyes were not confused. They were the eyes of a woman doing arithmetic. Don't tell them you found me, she had said at 11:40, dripping on the tile, before she said her name. 3 days. That's all I am asking. Amara had reasons to give her up, practical reasons. Her visa was a student visa, and the hours she worked in this shop were more hours than that visa politely allowed. Her tuition for the spring semester was due on the 28th. Her mother's dialysis in Surulere cost 110,000 won a session, and there were 2 sessions a week. And there was a brother finishing his last year at Unilag who still believed his sister was thriving in Korea because that was what she had decided he would believe. Gratitude from a family that sent men out in cars to hunt one small old woman would be the kind that arrived in an envelope. Amara had never in her life been able to afford to refuse an envelope. She had simply never taken one either, and she knew the difference between those 2 facts, and she knew which one her father had died still holding. No, she said, I have not seen her. Look outside. There is only rain. If you see her, you call this number. He read it out. Amara wrote nothing down and repeated the last 4 digits back to him wrongly on purpose, and heard him sigh and heard him say, again, and gave him the same wrong number in the same careful voice, and after the 3rd time he hung up. The dial tone went on for a moment before she set the receiver in its cradle. The young man by the door had gone back to his sleeves, but he was folding badly now, listening, and Amara understood that she had made a witness of him for the price of nothing. Okja licked her thumb, set the green lid on the windowsill with the care of someone returning a borrowed plate, and looked out at the street where the rain was flattening the awning of the fruit shop across the road. She had not expected the girl to lie. She had expected, honestly, to be handed over by 2 o'clock. She had been handed over by better-dressed people than these, by her own nephew, by a doctor she had known 30 years, by the woman who had cut her hair since 1998, and who had needed a favor from her son. She had come in here for warmth and rice and to sit somewhere no one thought to look, and instead she had been fed from the container and given the good half of the meal, and now she had been kept. On Saturday evening, in the private room on the 40th floor, her family intended to place a document in front of her, in front of witnesses, with the soup already served. Okja had 3 days to become a person no one could tidy away. "Your name," she said, without turning from the window. "Say it again, slowly. I want to get it right." "Adaeze," she said. "Adaeze." "Okay," repeated it to the window. The first attempt came out flattened, all the music pressed out of it. The second landed closer. On the third she turned around, and there was something almost triumphant in the set of her mouth, the same expression she wore when she managed the stairs without the rail. "Adaeze." "Yes, ma'am. It means something. First daughter. Daughter of a king, if you want to be grand about it." "My father wanted to be grand about it." Okja crossed the room slowly, sat on the edge of the bed, and took a small notebook from under her pillow. It was the kind sold at any stationery shop for 2,000 won, plastic cover, gridded pages, corners furred from handling. She wrote the name in Korean letters, then underneath, in careful Latin script, copying the shapes as if drawing a diagram of a machine. "I keep things in here," she said, "since the hospital." She turned the notebook toward Adaeze and let the pages fan. Dates, times, names. Sept 14, 3:40 p.m. Attorney Bay came with 2 folders, asked if I remembered signing in June. I did not sign anything in June. Oct 2. Dr. Min asked me to draw a clock. I drew it. He did not look at it. Oct 9. My brother's wife moved my mother's photograph to the storage room. She said it was for cleaning. 31 entries in a hand that grew shakier toward the back but never once wandered off the line. Adaeze read 4 pages and felt her pulse move in her throat. In Enugu, she had worked a geriatric ward for 4 years, long enough to know exactly what an honest cognitive assessment looked like and how long it took. 30 minutes minimum, a quiet room, a trained examiner, no relatives present, no morphine in the patient's blood. The evaluation the family had filed took 11 minutes in a hospital corridor 2 days after hip surgery, while Okja was still on the pump and could not have named the month or her own shoes. "Ma'am," she said, "can I photograph these pages?" "Why?" "Because a notebook can be lost. A photograph is harder to tidy away." Okja looked at her for a long moment. Then she pushed the notebook an inch closer, which was the whole permission. That night Adaeze sat on the floor of her room over the garage with her phone propped against a water bottle and photographed all 31 entries, then the front cover, then the receipt tucked inside from a pharmacy in Haehwadong, because dates matter. Afterwards, she opened her banking app and did the arithmetic she had been avoiding since Tuesday. 620,000 won. 8 months of shaving her own meals down to the size that let her send money on the 1st of every month. Of that, 350,000. Already had a name on it, and the name was not hers. It went out on the 1st of every month to a clinic in Enugu that took cash or bank transfer and nothing else, where her mother's file sat in a green folder with a rubber band around it and a nurse who wrote receipts in ballpoint. Rent took 400,000 on the 4th. Gas and electric took 46. Her phone plan took 33, and she had already dropped it twice to the cheapest tier, which meant the screen buffered whenever she tried to watch anything longer than a minute. She wrote the numbers on the back of the pharmacy receipt, under the barcode, in the small square handwriting she had learned from a nursing tutor in Akka, who used to wrap knuckles for loops that touched. 620, minus 779. She looked at the shortfall for a while. Then she wrote, at the bottom, the figure she had not let herself write down before, 1,200,000. That was what the immigration office required if her sponsorship collapsed, and she had to prove she could support herself while she searched for another household. 3 months, the agency woman had said, tapping her pen against a laminated chart. 3 months to transfer, and if nobody signs, you go home. She had said it kindly. That was the strange part. Everyone in this city delivered bad news kindly, in a soft voice, with 2 hands. Her permit was stitched to a family name she was not allowed to say out loud in public. She had understood that from the first week, when the housekeeper handed her a laminated card of house rules, and the 3rd rule was about photographs. At 11:10 she called home, because Sunday night in Seoul was Sunday afternoon there, and her mother always answered on the 4th ring, breathing like a woman who had walked from the back of the compound. "Are you eating?" her mother asked. "I ate rice and fish," she said, which was true if you counted the fish flavoring in the packet. "You sound thin." "You can't hear thin, Mama." "I can hear thin." Behind her mother, a generator coughed and caught, and someone shouted about the gate. The clinic said the machine is fixed. "Don't send extra this month, send small. I'll send what I send. You are stubborn like your father, and he died stubborn." She laughed, and her eyes stung, and she held the phone away from her mouth until the sting passed. That was the whole conversation. 2 minutes, 40 seconds. She sat on the edge of the mattress in the rooftop room afterward with the phone face down on her knee, listening to the neighbor's dog turn circles on the concrete outside, and thought about a table of 11 people 2 nights ago, and a woman in pearl earrings repeating her vowels back to her, stretching them, softening the R, making a small performance out of the word. "Ma'am." And the laughter that had gone around that table like a plate being passed, and then the man at the head of the table who had not laughed, setting down his chopsticks and saying 4 words into the silence. "Say it again." She still did not know what he had meant by it, whether it was rescue or curiosity or a test she had already failed. She only knew that she had said it again, exactly as she said it, and that nobody had breathed until she was done. At 6 the next morning, she messaged the gimbap shop where she worked the early shift and told the owner she could not come. 42,001. She typed the message twice before she sent it, deleted the apology, put it back, then removed the word. "Sorry." Because he charged her for lateness and would read an apology as an invitation to subtract more, she sent it at 6:04. The screen lit her hands and then went dark, and 42,001 left her weak as quietly as steam leaving a pot. The rooftop room in Sinseildong held cold the way cheap concrete does, in the walls, patiently. Ifeoma pulled the blanket around her shoulders like a coat and sat on the floor because the chair was covered in her uniform, folded, still smelling faintly of sesame oil. On the plastic drawer tower by the window stood 3 envelopes: rent, home, exam. The 3rd was the thinnest, 90,001 for the licensure application, 87,000 inside, and she had planned to close that gap with this morning's shift. Now the gap would wait until Thursday. She did the arithmetic anyway, twice, because numbers behaved. Numbers did not ask her to repeat herself. Then she read Mrs. Beck's message again, the one that had woken her at 5:20, thumbed out in the housekeeper's hurried, punctuation-free Korean. Hyun said it again, in the hallway, to her father, exactly the way you say it. Nobody breathed. 11 months. That was the number the family used when they spoke of the child, always with the same lowered voice, the way people mention a debt. 11 months since the funeral. 11 months of a 6-year-old who ate when told, sat when told, and produced no sound at all except the small dry cough she used in place of a word. 3 specialists, 2 hospitals in Gangnam with waiting rooms like hotel lobbies, a play therapist who came on Wednesdays and left looking tired, and then a hired hand from Enugu, sitting at the far end of a table in Hanam-dong, leaning toward a plate of untouched galbijim and saying, in her own English, in her own mouth, "Small bites, nobody is timing you." Ifeoma had not meant it for the room. She had meant it for the girl, whose fork had been shaking, whose grandfather was watching, whose aunt had already twice said the word. Slow. In a way that made the child's ears redden. The room had heard it anyway. She remembered the laugh first. Not cruel exactly, and that was the part she kept turning over, the way you turn over a coin to see if it is real. Seo Mi-rae had laughed the way people laugh at a menu translation. "Say it again." The aunt had said, delighted, her wine glass tilting. Slowly. "Nobody is timing you." She had repeated the sentence with the vowels stretched, dropping the consonants she imagined Ifeoma dropping, and two of the men had chuckled into their napkins, and someone at the end had said something about hiring from agencies that at least tested pronunciation, and the chairman had said nothing at all, which was somehow the loudest thing in the room. Ifeoma had set her hands in her lap. She had counted, in Igbo, to 5. She had said, in her own steady voice, "That is how I say it. She understood me." And then the child had put down her fork and eaten, small bites, 6 of them. Ifeoma had counted those too. What happened after she left? That was Mrs. Beck's news, and Ifeoma had read it 4 times in the dark before she trusted it. Ha-Ion, at 11 at night, in the upstairs hallway, in her pajamas with the yellow ducks, had said the sentence to her father. All of it. Small bites. Nobody is timing you. In Ifeoma's rhythm, Ifeoma's dropped consonants, Ifeoma's soft landing on the last word. Nobody breathed until she was done. Ifeoma put the phone face down on the floor. She should have felt only the good thing. Instead, her stomach had gone tight the way it did at immigration, when a man behind glass held her passport and took his time. Because in that house nothing happened without being noticed, and being noticed was expensive. She had watched it happen to the driver who was let go for a scratch nobody could find. She had learned the shape of that family in 4 weeks, the way you learn a staircase in the dark, by the places that give. Her contract said afternoons, 2 to 8, Monday to Saturday, through an agency that took 18% and called her a domestic support specialist. Her visa said one employer. Her savings said keep your head down. Her mother, on a video call last Sunday with the generator groaning behind her in Enugu, had said, "Ifeoma, you are there to work, not to fix people." All of it sensible, all of it true. She reached for the notebook. It was a 901 thing from Daiso, ruled, the cover already softening at the corner. In it she wrote Korean sentences she needed, and, beside them, her own marks, little curves and slashes she had invented for pitch, because no dictionary had ever been able to tell her where a Seoul sentence went up. 211 pages of her trying to be understood. On the newest page, from Tuesday, she had written the child's name and, under it, the only 3 things Ha-Eun had responded to. The blue cup, the window seat, the song about the rain. She added a 4th line. Small bites. Then she stood, filled the kettle, and cracked the window so the gas would not gather, because the landlord's warning was taped above the burner in letters she had learned by heart. At 9:12, the boiling water went still in the cup, untouched. Because down in the alley, at the bottom of the iron stairs where the neighbors parked their scooters, a black sedan had stopped with its engine running. Nobody in Sinseol-dong owned a car like that. A man in a gray coat stepped out, looked up at the rooftop, and did not climb. He simply waited, the way people wait when they have been told they will not be refused. Ada heard the engine before she understood it. She had come out with her tea to bring in the socks drying on the line, and now she stood barefoot on cold concrete with 3 clothespins in her fist, looking down at a roof of black lacquer that reflected the whole gray sky. She counted the way she always counted. 41,001 in her purse until Friday, 2 shifts owed to her at the care center, minus the one she had missed, minus the 20,000 the head nurse had docked for it, said with the flat voice of a woman who had heard every excuse. A taxi fare she had paid at 2 in the morning because the trains had stopped and a small boy had needed to be somewhere warm. A licensing exam in 11 weeks. A brother in Enugu whose school fees were due in 6. None of the numbers explained a car like that. The man in the gray coat looked up again and lifted one hand, not a wave, an acknowledgement, the way a person confirms an address. Then he stood with his hands folded, beside the neighbors' scooters, in front of Mrs. Han's stacked kimchi pots, waiting. Ada set the cup on the water tank. She went inside, put on her cardigan, tied her head wrap properly, and looked at herself for 2 seconds in the mirror taped to the wardrobe door. If this was the police, she would want her name said correctly. If this was something else, she would want the same. The iron stairs rang under her slippers. 14 steps. She had climbed them the night before at 3 in the morning, with her scarf gone from her neck, and her hands still smelling of a stranger's child. "Miss Obi," the man said, when she reached the bottom. "Adaeze Obi." He said it slowly and correctly, which meant he had practiced. "Yes. My name is Baek Sang-hyun." He offered a card with 2 hands. The paper was heavy, the lettering small, and the company name on it was one she had seen on the side of a construction crane on her walk to the subway, and on the sign above a department store she had never entered. I am here about Tuesday night. Sinseldong Station, the platform bench, 11:50. Ada's mouth went dry. Is he all right? Beck paused. It was the pause of a man filing something away. He had been instructed to notice what she asked first, not who sent him, not what she would receive, not whether she was in trouble. The chairman's son had asked for that detail specifically, in the tone he used for contract clauses. He is at home, Beck said. He slept 9 hours. That has not happened in 4 months. Good. Ada felt her shoulders drop half an inch, and disliked how visible it must have been. Then he doesn't need me for anything, so you're here for the scarf. The scarf is being cleaned. It doesn't need cleaning. It needs to be kept. She heard the sharpness and softened it. He held it the whole way. If you take it now, he'll think he did something wrong. Beck's expression did not change, but something behind it adjusted. He reached into his coat and drew out an envelope. Cream, thick, unsealed, the flap tucked rather than glued. He held it out with the same two-handed formality he had used for the card. Ada looked at it. She did not take it. The family wishes to express gratitude, Beck said. Then they can say thank you. That's free. She put her hands in her cardigan pockets, which was rude and necessary because her fingers had begun to want the envelope. Rent was due on the 5th. Who is the family? Seo. The boy's grandfather is Chairman Seo Kyungmo. His father is Seo Do-hyun, Chief Executive of Seo Ilhwa Construction and Development. He let that sit for exactly as long as most people needed. The boy's name is Ha-jun. He is 8. He has not spoken since March. Ada said nothing for a moment. On the platform she had assumed a runaway, or a child with careless parents, or a grandmother somewhere in a panic. She had crouched down and asked him 3 times where he lived, and he had only stared at her, and then reached up and touched 2 fingers to the air in front of her mouth. Not her face, her mouth. She had understood it the way one understands a plant turning toward a window. So she had talked. About Inugu, about the way her mother pounded yam, about the price of tomatoes in Sinsale Market versus Itaewon, which was a scandal. About her exam, about the man on the 152 bus who sang hymns badly. 40 minutes, then an hour, until the station guard found the emergency contact in the boy's coat, and a driver came, and Ha-jun had gripped her scarf in both hands and would not let go, and she had said, keep it, it's yours," and gone home with her neck bare and her shift already lost. He wanted a voice, she said now, half to herself. Chairman Seo would like you to come to the house tomorrow morning, Beck said. A car will be sent at 10. I have class at 11. Beck blinked once. 9, Ada said. I'll come at 9, and I'll leave at 10:15. And put that envelope away, Mr. Beck, before Mrs. Han comes out for her pots and decides I've done something to be ashamed of. Beck put the envelope away. He did it the way he seemed to do everything, without argument, without hurry, sliding the cream rectangle back into his coat as though it had never left it. Behind him, the steel door of Han's kitchen banged open, and Mrs. Han came out backward, dragging the big dented soup pot toward the drain, her rubber slippers slapping the wet concrete. Ada, she said, without looking up. Who is that? A customer. At 11 at night, in that coat. Mrs. Han tipped the pot. Gray water rushed into the drain, carrying 3 spent anchovies and a bay leaf. Tell your customer the alley is not a lobby. Beck bowed to her, precisely, the bow of a man who had been raised to measure such things, and walked out past the recycling bins. Ada took the pot handle from Mrs. Han's left hand, because the older woman's left wrist had been bad since March, and neither of them mentioned it. Later, on the roof of the building in Aheon, where her room sat like an afterthought beside the water tank, Ada did the arithmetic she always did before agreeing to anything. Rent, $480,000. The second tuition installment, due the 11th. Her sister's school fees in Enugu, which her mother would never name aloud but would mention through the price of yams. 2 hours of sleep lost to a car ride she had not asked for. The number at the bottom of that column was not money, it was hours, and hours were the only thing she owned outright. She had reasons to say no, practical reasons, necessary reasons. She had already said 9 o'clock. The dinner would not leave her. Not the crystal, not the 11 courses, not the abalone she had plated for 200 guests' worth of practice and eaten none of. What stayed was the stairwell, the boy sitting on the 4th step in a small gray suit, holding an English reader with an elephant on the cover and one corner bent soft as cloth. What stayed was her own voice going quiet, and even the way it did for children, and the word. Elephant. rolling out of her mouth with her father's Enugu vowels riding on it, and Mr. Kwan's wife in the doorway repeating it back with her hand over her mouth, delighted, as if Ada had performed a trick. 2 other women had laughed. Someone said, in Korean, that the agency should have sent someone whose English was real. And then, from the end of the hall, a man in a black tie who had not laughed. "Say it again, please." She had said it again. She had not known why until Beck found her in the alley. At 8:52 the next morning, the sedan was waiting at the mouth of the alley with its engine off, and the driver stood beside it in white gloves, and Mrs. Hahn watched from behind the window mist of the soup vat with her arms crossed. Ada wore her interview blouse and carried her school bag because she intended to arrive at Hanyang by 10:50, and she intended to be believed about it. The house was in Hanam-dong, behind a wall the color of wet ash, behind a gate that recognized the car and opened without anyone speaking. Gravel, a persimmon tree pruned into obedience. Stone, glass, and a hallway so wide that her footsteps arrived twice. A housekeeper set out guest slippers, dove gray, brand new. What struck Ada was the smell. There wasn't one. No garlic, no sesame, no rice steam, no burnt-bottom scent of a kitchen that fed people. A house that size and nobody had cooked in it since yesterday's caterers left. Chairman Seo Gwang-il received her in a low room with a paper screen and a scroll and a tea tray, and he did not stand. He was 81. His hands rested on a cane he clearly did not need for balance, only for punctuation. "Sit." She sat. "How much does the woman in Ahion pay you?" 11,000 an hour. And dinner. "And you turned down my envelope." "I turned down an envelope in an alley from a man I met 40 seconds earlier." Ada put her hands in her lap. "Chairman, may I ask what the work is? Then I'll know whether I'm expensive." The old man's mouth moved, not quite a smile. He tapped the cane once against the tatami edge. "My grandson is 7. Since his mother died, he has not spoken. 14 months, 3 doctors, 2 of them very famous. Tap. Last night, on my staircase, he said one word, in English, to a kitchen worker whose name nobody in this house knew." Ada let a long moment pass. Outside, a magpie was arguing with something. He said, "Elephant." She said, he said. Again. She heard herself breathe. She kept her face still, because the old man was watching for exactly the flicker that money buys. "Then I'll say something you won't like," Ada said. "I'm not a treatment. I'm a graduate student in applied linguistics who is 11 weeks from a defense she cannot afford to fail, and who pays her rent with 2 evening conversation classes in Sinchon and a Saturday reading group for 6-year-olds whose mothers pay in cash. I don't cure children. I don't have a method with a name on it. If your grandson speaks again, it will happen because he decided a room was safe enough to risk his voice in. A safe room is the only thing I know how to build." The chairman set his cup into its saucer with the precision of a man who had been photographed for 50 years and had learned never to rattle anything. "Safe?" he repeated, as though testing the weight of a coin. "Safe," Ada said. He reached under the newspaper on the low table and produced a slim gray folder, and something in Ada's chest went very quiet, the way a market goes quiet before rain. He did not open it with any drama. He turned it so it faced her and left his hand resting on the cover. Adaize Nwosu, doctoral candidate, applied linguistics, D2 visa, valid 19 more months. You live in a semi-basement in Hwagok-dong with a landlord who raised your deposit last spring. He said it the way other men read stock prices. On the 3rd of every month you send 480,000 won to a bank in Enugu, 26 months without missing one. Your father's dialysis is 3 times a week. Ada kept her hands where they were, folded on her knee, thumbs still. 26 months. She had never once written the number down in a place anyone could find. She had carried it in her head, on buses, through winter, and now an old man in a house with heated floors had said it out loud in a voice with no cruelty in it at all, which was somehow worse. "You could have asked me," she said. "People tell me what they believe I want to hear." He lifted his hand off the folder. "Paper has no manners." He took a card from his breast pocket, wrote on the back of it with a fountain pen, and slid it across the table. Ada looked at the figure. Her mind did the arithmetic before her pride could stop it, because that was how her mind had been trained by scarcity, a monthly sum that covered the dialysis, the deposit, her sister's school fees, the winter gas bill she had been rationing since November, and still left enough to buy her mother the good blood pressure medicine instead of the cheap one. 4 afternoons of her month for all of that. She sat with the number for 3 full seconds. She let herself want it. Then she turned the card face down and pushed it back across the wood. 40,001 an hour, she said. 4 hours a week, Tuesday and Thursday, 4 to 6. Invoiced through your household office, with a written contract, with tax paid, in my name. The chairman's eyebrows did not move, but something behind his face shifted, like a door opening 2 centimeters in another wing of the house. Why? Because in 8 months I want to be able to walk out of this gate, Ada said, and still be someone who was hired, not someone who was bought and then discarded when the boy either talks or doesn't. You think I would discard you? I think your family has employed 9 specialists in 2 years. She had counted them from the way the housekeeper spoke about the sunroom, the way the boy flinched at clipboards. Somebody discarded somebody. Outside, the magpie won its argument and left. Conditions, Ada said. No cameras in the room. No one behind glass with a notebook. Nobody in this house asks him to greet a guest or to say his name or to say thank you out loud for as long as I'm working with him. And if he makes a sound, any sound, nobody claps. Nobody claps, the chairman said slowly. Applause is a test with a smile on it. He knows the difference. He's 7, not stupid. The old man was silent for a while. He looked at the garden, where the last of the persimmons hung on a bare branch like small lamps nobody had turned off. And if he never speaks again? Then he never speaks again, Ada said, and he is still your grandson. That was the sentence that did it, though she would not understand it for weeks. The chairman had heard promises from doctors with 3 surnames of credentials. He had heard a woman in Zurich guarantee results in 9 months. Not one of them had left him a version of the future in which the child was still whole. He was opening his mouth to answer when the door slid. The boy stood in the gap in white socks, hair flattened on one side from the sofa, holding something in both hands the way you carry water. He crossed the room without looking at either adult, came to the low table, and set it down between the teacup and the folder. A wooden elephant, palm-sized, dark, one ear chipped, the kind of carving that lives on the shelves of rich houses and gets dusted by someone else. He positioned it deliberately, trunk pointing at Ada, and then he took 2 steps back and stood with his hands behind him. Ada did not lean forward. She did not brighten her voice into the sing-song that adults use on children they intend to fix. She looked at the elephant, then at him, and said, quietly, in the language her grandmother had used to name every animal in the world, Enyi. The boy's lips parted. His tongue touched the back of his teeth. Air moved. Beside her, the chairman shifted his weight forward, and Ada put her palm flat on the table between them, fingers spread, the way a person steadies a glass without touching the hand that is reaching for it. Wait, she said, not to the boy. The chairman stopped, 71 years old, 4 factories in Ulsan, and he stopped because a Nigerian graduate student in a borrowed cardigan had put her hand down on his own dining table. Behind him, Mr. Beck's shoes made a small sound on the floor and then made no sound at all. The boy's mouth stayed open for 3 seconds. Air went out of it. Nothing rode on the air. Then his lips pressed shut, and his jaw tightened, and his hand came off the elephant and went down the side of his trousers, wiping something away that was not there. Ada did not chase it. She had learned that in a church basement in Enugu when she was 19, teaching phonics to children who had been beaten for stammering. You never run after a sound. You put it down where the child can reach it, and you look away, and you wait. So she turned the elephant slightly so the chipped ear faced her, and she touched the chip with her thumbnail. Somebody dropped him, she said. In Korean, plainly, no brightness in it. Enyi, that's how my grandmother said it. In Korean you say kokkiri, 2 words, 1 animal. He doesn't mind. The boy looked at the chip. Then he looked at her thumb. Down the hall the kitchen door swung and the smell came through it again. The smell that had been quietly scandalizing that house since 4 o'clock. Palm oil, dried fish, ground crayfish, the pots she had asked Mrs. Hahn for and returned scrubbed. In 11 years, nothing in that dining room had ever smelled like anyone's grandmother. The chairman's nostrils had flared at it twice and he had said nothing, which for him was an enormous concession. Say it again, his son said. He was standing where he had been standing for 6 minutes, near the window, hands loose, tie still knotted at 7 in the evening. He had asked the same 3 words at the dinner 2 Fridays ago, when his cousin's wife had repeated Ada's vowels back to the table with her fingers pinching her own throat, and the laughter had come up like water finding a level. and Ada had gone on describing her research in exactly the voice she had been born with. He had asked it then in front of 19 people. He was asking it now in front of his father. Ada said it again. Enyi. The boy's tongue touched the back of his teeth. The front of the word began to shape itself in his mouth, the closed hum of the beginning, and Ada kept her eyes on the elephant's chipped ear, because she knew that being watched is a weight. And then Mr. Beck's phone rang in his jacket. It rang twice before he silenced it. The boy's mouth closed. He picked the elephant up, held it against his sternum with both hands the way children hold things they have decided to be responsible for, and walked out of the dining room. His socks were mismatched. Nobody in that house had noticed, and Ada had noticed at 4:15 and said nothing, because a 9-year-old is allowed to have one thing that no adult has arranged. The chairman sat back. He looked at his son. He looked at the empty chair where the elephant had been. "Bake," he said. "Call Dr. Seo." Dr. Seo arrived in 50 minutes, coat still on, tablet already awake, and she was not a woman who could be dismissed as a snob or a fool. 4 years, 211 sessions. She had been the one who told them, gently, in the second month after the funeral, that the child's silence was not stubbornness. She had the graphs. She had the boy's own recorded voice from when he was 5, singing a jingle about strawberry milk, which she had never played for the father because she had decided he was not ready to hear it. She listened to the chairman's account standing up. Then she turned to Ada and asked, without unkindness, "What is your clinical qualification?" "I don't have one," Ada said. "Your degree?" "Master's in Applied Linguistics, Second Language Phonology. I study how adults hear sounds their mouths were never taught to make." She held Dr. Seo's eyes. "I'm not a speech-language pathologist. If you're about to say that I shouldn't be running sessions with a selectively mute child, you're right, and I've already said it to Mr. Beck twice." Something in Dr. Seo's shoulders came down a centimeter. "Then you understand my concern. I understand it better than the people paying you." The chairman's hand flattened on the table. He opened his mouth. "He has opened his mouth before," Dr. Seo said, "in the car park of the hospital in October, for a dog. Then, for 9 weeks, nothing. This is the part where the family decides it has found the key, and calls people, and the boy learns that his voice is a door other people want to walk through." She said it evenly. She had said it before and been overruled before. "I am asking for 2 things, a protocol and no audience. And I'm asking for a third," Ada said. "Nobody films him." Mr. Beck looked at the floor. That was when Ada understood, with a cold neatness, that something had already been filmed. The papers came out anyway, because that was the only language the chairman had left. 6 months. Residence in the annex. A figure written in ink that would have cleared her tuition installment due on the 15th, her rent, and Chidi's final year fees in Enugu, with money left to buy her mother the pressure medicine she pretended she was still taking. Ada read the figure. She let herself feel it, all of it, the whole warm, cowardly relief of it, for 4 full seconds, the way an honest person counts money. Then she said, "My visa allows me 20 hours a week, and none of them in a private house without a permit I don't have. If I sign this, I'm working illegally in the home of the man who owns 3% of the Korean shipping registry, and when it comes apart on me." The chairman said, "It will not come apart." "That," Ada said, "is what people with your surname always say to people with mine." She caught the last bus, the 6900, at 9:40, coat smelling of palm oil and someone else's fabric softener. At the second stop, her phone lit with an email from the Office of International Affairs. Subject line, "Verification of off-campus activity. Please attend Monday, 10 o'clock. Her bag was heavier on her lap than it had been. She opened it under the bus light. The elephant lay on top of her notebooks, trunk pointing up at her, ear chipped, put there by hands nobody had seen move. She did not text him about the elephant. She carried it up the 4 flights to her room in Sinchon, set it on the windowsill facing inward, and stood there a moment with her coat still on. The chipped ear caught the streetlight. Somewhere below, a delivery bike idled and moved on. She rinsed rice, ate standing up, and read the email from the Office of International Affairs 4 times, until the sentences stopped meaning anything, and became what they actually were: a room, a time, a chair with her name on it. Then she took out a folder she had kept since November. Monday, 10 o'clock, room 214. Fluorescent light with a faint hum in it. A laminated poster on the wall explained visa categories in 3 languages, none of them warmly. The officer's nameplate said Ryu. He was younger than she expected and more careful than she feared, and he laid a printout on the desk between them, face up, the way you set down something you did not want to be holding. A photograph. Ada in a doorway in Halmeoni, in her good gray dress, a crystal glass in her hand. Behind her, unmistakable, a wall of family portraits. The caption underneath had been written by someone who had never met her and had guessed at everything. "There is a complaint," Officer Ryu said. "It alleges paid domestic employment outside the scope of your student visa. It alleges that you have been engaged as staff by a household under press attention. Who filed it? Complaints of this type can be anonymous." Ada nodded once. She thought about the woman at the dinner who had repeated her vowels back to her slowly, as though tasting something and finding it strange. She thought about the men in gray who had waited by the cars. She opened her folder. "Then let me answer it with paper," she said. She laid the pages out in order, the way she had learned to lay out data for a supervisor who did not like surprises. The research agreement she had asked for in December, in place of the salary they had first pushed across the table at her. The ethics approval from the university board, stamped, with the boy's guardian consent attached. 14 weeks of session logs, handwritten, timed, unpaid. Her supervisor's letter naming the project. Tonal transfer and selective silence in a bilingual pediatric case. Her tax records from the restaurant in Yeonnam-dong, which was where her rent actually came from, 6 shifts a week, a job the photograph had not thought to mention. "I refused the money," she said. "Not because I am proud, because I knew that one day someone would sit exactly where you are sitting and ask me exactly this." Officer Ryu read for a long time. He turned pages with the pad of one finger. The door opened without a knock, which in that building only happened for one kind of person. The chairman's son came in alone. No aides, no lawyer, no coat over his arm for someone else to take. He carried a single envelope. He bowed to the officer with the exact depth the room deserved, no more, and then he did the thing his family had spent 9 years arranging the world to prevent. "I would like to enter a statement into your record," he said, "in writing, with my name on it. Sir, that isn't... My son is 9 years old. He has not spoken since his mother's funeral. 4 clinics have written the word. Elective. On his file. This woman is not household staff. She is a researcher who has been working with him without payment, with my consent, under her university's supervision." He set the envelope down and squared it against the edge of the desk. "Please staple that to hers. Copies of this file can be requested by journalists. I know that. Staple it anyway." Ada looked at his hands. They were steady, and the knuckle of his thumb was white. Outside afterward, in a corridor that smelled of floor wax and boiled corn tea, she stopped him. "You just handed them the one thing you have been protecting. Yes, it may come apart on you now." He was quiet for a beat, the way he always was before the answers that cost him something. "Then it comes apart on both of us," he said. "Not only on you. That was your objection, I think, that the shipping registry has one surname on it and the risk had another. That was my objection. I heard it," he said. "I have been trying to hear things." The verification closed 11 days later with a stamp on a single page. Research activity, approved, semester registered. Practical, unromantic, worth more than the car that had been sent to collect her that first night. She kept the 6 shifts in Yeonnam-dong. She kept the 6900 bus at 9:40. When the family sent a driver anyway, she let him take her only as far as the bus stop, and by March the driver had begun bringing 2 coffees, one for her, one for himself, which was its own kind of citizenship. The woman who had corrected her vowels appeared at a public lecture in April, sat in the 3rd row, and asked a question about code switching that was not a good question but was an honest one. On her way out she said Ada's name. She said it badly. She said it correctly. On the 2nd Saturday of May, she stood in the wide kitchen of the house on the hill, and the room smelled of Scotch bonnet and crayfish for the first time in its 40 years. She had not asked permission. She had brought her own pot. The chairman ate slowly, the way old men eat when they are deciding something, and said only that the soup was strong. His son ate 2 bowls and said nothing at all, because he had learned that silence at her table was a compliment she accepted. Later, on the terrace, she was telling him the Igbo word for that particular kind of quiet when he set down his cup. "Say it again," he said. "The same 4 words, a different room, a different weight." She said it again. He repeated it badly, with his careful consonants and his careful mouth, and she did not correct him. At 9:40 she left anyway. He walked her down the drive to the gate, as he did now, and the driver was already waiting at the bus stop below with 2 paper cups going soft in his hands. 3 cups that night, steam rising in the cold, the 6900 turning the corner, on time.